The CBS 58 First Alert weather forecast is brought to you by Shell. Protect your engine like never before with Shell nitrogen-enriched gasolines. Now with 20% more cleaning agents. No other gasoline protects better.
Serving it up hot and fresh. You know when it's real. Broadcasting live from the Wendy's studio. The Evening Rush on 1290 WMCS, the talk of the town.
Hey, Aaron, make sure you play that. We've got Lauren Victoria Burke. She's just walked in, so we're going to have her on later on this afternoon. But make sure you play that when she comes in.
How long we on for?
Well, we got. We'll tell you in a second. All right, I am. It's what time is it? It's 4:42. You are listening to 1290 WMCS, the Talk of the Town. I'm your host, Earl Ingram, and I am presently joined by Mr. Bob Weiner. He's the National Democratic Strategist of former Clinton White House, and he is also was the House Senior Aide and Congressional Senior Staff. He has been outspoken for probably your entire career. And you're my favorite interview. I can tell you, this is about the third time I've had an opportunity to interview you, and you are as straightforward a man, I think, that I've ever met.
Well, Earl, it's a real pleasure to be with you, and I love being on, and you guys have to confront the next iteration of the no mandate, but we're going to force transvaginal ultrasounds Republican Party, and then make them pay for it, as Doonesbury said in his last column. The final indignity. We don't mandate anything except what the World Health Organization says is literally rape, forcing a probe into a woman, and then the final indignity, making them pay for it. That they'll do in Rick Perry's Texas and Bob McDonnell's Virginia and the Republican governor of Pennsylvania, who says that the woman should simply not look at the ultrasound. But they don't mandate.
Yes, sir.
They don't mandate. They only mandate ultrasound probes.
Where are we going with this? I've heard some news today that this is not looking good. What are we up against?
We're up against a bunch of rich guys in robes with federal health insurance themselves who have no clue about poor and average people who need, and many wouldn't have, adequate health insurance without the bill it took generations for Congress to pass. That's what we're up against. We're up against when Ken Cuccinelli, I had a forum at the National Press Club, the Attorney General of Virginia, and he is the I had to be disgustingly bipartisan and objective, having Cuccinelli against Martha Coakley, the Attorney General of Massachusetts, and I moderated and emceed it. But Cuccinelli said that these justices will bring in their world political appointee views into their decision-making, even though they probably shouldn't, but they will. You can't avoid that. So you've got a very conservative court. And today, the one who everybody said was the swing vote, he isn't really
Kennedy.
A swing vote. Kennedy said, why would you force people to buy? And the Chief Justice, Roberts, said that if this is allowed, all bets are off. So Jeff Toobin, the CNN correspondent, the legal correspondent, said it looks like the law will be struck down. And I think I would agree, and I predicted that in October in my piece in the Palm Beach Post, why is the Obama administration so confident health care law heads for the Supreme Court? I'd invite our listeners to go to weinerpublic.com, that's WEINER, public.com, and the October, click on op-eds, and then the October 5th Palm Beach Post op-ed that we did that says exactly what's happening today, in fact.
If this battle is lost, it certainly throws a monkey wrench into the re-election prospects of the president, wouldn't you say?
You're one of the few who understands that the best thing is to win, not to lose. Because I've heard this bizarre rationalization from people saying, oh, it lets us mobilize. Well, it means we have no choice but to mobilize if we lose this. But it took literally generations since Harry Truman started fighting for health care. I was Claude Pepper's chief of staff for the House Aging Committee and the Health Subcommittee back in the 70s, and Pepper told me that Truman was fighting for health care. Then Ted Kennedy, then Hillary Clinton. through Bill Clinton and now Barack Obama. And finally, we get something that's actually a compromise to get the Republicans in. For all they say about there hasn't been a compromise, we gave them 160 tax breaks for small business in the bill. We get that we wouldn't have done otherwise. We gave them private sector instead of through single payer through Medicare as a Medicare extension. We're doing it through the private sector. This was a compromise piece of legislation so that you could get the provisions, so that you could get children's care through 26, cheaper drugs for seniors, pre-existing conditions covered, no lifetime caps, not being thrown off if sick, free mammograms and colonoscopies, and making sure that 85% of your premiums go to benefits. The Republicans and the U.S. Supreme Court want to throw all that out the window and not let us become finally a country that has been the only one without health insurance in the entire free world.
But what do you say to the argument that you can't mandate and force the American people to purchase insurance? Because obviously it appears to me that everything is hanging on that.
Well, that's the argument we lost today, essentially.
Well, but that's the argument that holds it all together, isn't it?
Well, it doesn't have to. And I think the honest answer on that one is that Obama compromised, but actually didn't have to. Hillary Clinton's bill did not have a mandate. It was done through Medicare. You could do it as single payer. You could also do it as simply standards that insurance companies have to follow. And if you do it as which Congress has done since time immemorial in mandating safety standards on products, I mean, forever, and quality standards on products. When I was chief of staff of the House Aging Committee, we said that Medigap insurance for seniors had to have certain good housekeeping seals of approval standards. And so we've had this forever. And I remember the insurance companies actually sent a car to try to depose me and make me testify, and the Congress stood up for me because I was the chief of staff of the committee that passed this legislation under Claude Pepper, and the case was thrown out, saying there's absolutely, by the court, no precedent for the insurance companies saying you had no right to legislate this. There is a right to legislate those provisions of the children, the free senior drugs, the pre-existing conditions, no lifetime caps, not being thrown off if sick, free mammograms and colonoscopies, and 85% go to sick benefits. There is total precedent for that. So it is possible, and we'll find out tomorrow in the case as they listen to that debate, whether they are willing to do what's called severability, not have the mandate, but require those standards in insurance.
How much of this is going to be based on party affiliation? Supposedly with the Supreme Court, that's not supposed to be the case.
But it is, and as I have been telling people, that an attorney general from Virginia came to the National Press Club and said that these justices will bring in their political appointee world political view. And so, unfortunately, you've got the conservative bloc, you've got Roberts and Alito, Scalia, Thomas, and even Kennedy, who are, as Jeff Toobin has said, is the most partisan court and the most divided court with years of 5-4 rulings ahead of us. Look what they did in Bush v. Gore and Citizens United, where they injected money into politics for the first time in 75 years. They ruled in favor of money coming back into politics. That's what this court is doing. And they will not allow Barack Obama's signal accomplishment, even though it was done in a bipartisan way with working with Republicans on the provisions, even though they didn't get many votes despite that. And by the way, we've had, with Medicare, Social Security, and the Civil Rights Act, we used to get 60 to 90 minority votes because you'd work with them and have them join in the process. But since Newt Gingrich became Speaker, we've had a politically volatile Congress where you get not one Republican vote. That's an outrage. That, to me, that's not government, and it's not why I went into public service and why I enjoy it. I enjoy doing things for people. So I don't agree with the national Democratic strategy, one that's being posited now, of saying we hope the whole. And I talked to a congressman who's actually involved with the House Democratic Caucus. It's John Larson, the chair of the House Democratic Caucus, who said he hopes the whole bill gets thrown down if the mandate gets thrown down. I don't hope that. I hope that we do get the severability with the specific provisions that stay in, because that would be a victory for the American people, even though it makes it more difficult to win on the issue in the election, because it's harder to explain that the mandate was thrown out by the court.
Mr. Bob Weiner, how do you and how does the White House, or how do the American people, those of us who think that this was the right and proper thing to do, when is the next time somebody will attempt to do?
Oh,
I mean, this may be because it took so much to even get to the point we are at now. If this is overturned, I'm fearful that decades will pass. And at the same time that those decades pass, many people who are out here now, Tea Partiers who are debating and arguing and saying, hands off of my health care, and you are...
Hands off of my Medicare, which is the
Yes.
federal government.
Yes, well, nobody ever said that they were independent thinkers.
Yeah.
And so those people who don't understand that if this is overturned, down the road, they're going to wind up suffering because of what has happened.
Well, you die sooner. We have the 45th and 49th life expectancy and infant mortality in the world. We're not the best. And we used to be the #1 tallest country in the world, which is a healthcare indicator. We're now number 7. We have fallen because our healthcare is not the best, because we're giving all our money to the insurance companies. We pay twice as much and don't get the proper healthcare that we should, despite the talk to the contrary, saying other people stand in lines. Canada doesn't stand in line. Britain doesn't stand in line. That's nonsense. That's insurance company babble. And if you go to Canada, the people love their healthcare system. So you are absolutely right. I am fearful also that it will be another entire generation before this comes back. And look at the pattern, because you and I, unfortunately, are old enough to know the pattern. Before each time it's considered in the Congress, before Hillary care, before Obamacare, each time there's a 15-point majority. By 65, 70%, the American people want national health insurance. Then the insurance companies get at it, and they put Harry and Louise out. They do their propaganda. They call it socialism. They call it big government intervention. And they talk about intrusion. They do all of that. And I don't understand how the American people buy the propaganda, but they do. And then suddenly the polls slip against it, and then the Congress, like lemmings, starts voting against it, and the Supreme Court now, like lemmings, will supposedly support that point of view because that's what the American people are doing. And we are now in the position of having the bill go down, even though the American people, when they think about it each time, are in favor of it.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Mr. Bob Weiner. It is always a pleasure.
Earl, what a pleasure.
We just don't have enough time here. I have your card, and I'm going to reach out to you where we can spend some real time, because I don't know anybody who has the passion and understanding of it as well as you do.
Good luck with the Republican primary coming on you.
Well, thank you very much. I want to thank Mr. Bob Weiner. We've got to go to a break. You are listening to 1290 WMCS, the talk of the town. I'm your host, Earl Ingram.
To turn your sick soul inside out so that the world